Hi, welcome back. This is Dr. Nagy from the Nagy Orthodontic Academy, and today we are going to do some basic wire bending. And all of you who do orthodontic treatment should be familiar with some basic wire bending techniques, such as the first and second order bends, and there's also the third order bends that we are not going to cover today, that I'll explain here in a second. So what do we talk about, or what do we use these wire bends for? You may have a situation where you have a couple of teeth. Let's see, maybe this is the 6, the 4, and a 5 here, and you'd like to move this 4. This is the mesial and this is the distal, and maybe you would like to move this tooth out a little bit to the buccal, and this is the lingual here. So maybe you have the brackets here, you have an arch wire there, and you just don't like the position of this tooth and you like to move it a little bit to the buccal. So what you could do, you could put a bend on the wire. So if this is your 19 by 25 stainless steel wire, you could take the wire out, and as the wire's coming straight, you could make a bend here, a step out bend, and when you push this wire into the bracket, this tooth will feel forced to go to the buccal, and this is what's called an out bend. Okay, you could reverse this and you could have an in bend, so that would make it going towards the lingual. So this out bend is going to make the tooth come out to the buccal, and it has a shape like this. So it has 4 turns, and they're all right degree turns. So this would be a useful bend to know to adjust some of the teeth and their position in the arch. So that would be a first order bend. So remember, the first order bend is just in and out bend. Okay, so we're gonna practice a little bit this, and I'll explain a little bit more in details. But the couple of things that you will need today, you will need a light wire plier, and this one has a longer working length here. You get a rounded end here, and then it has a more square part. Okay, so you will need that. You will need a distal end cutter. Any distal end cutter will work. And then you will need some 19 by 25 wire. I'm gonna use a straight one here because it's cheap and it's easy to practice with. But you could also use a preformed arch wire like this one, and you can practice on that. I like practicing on these straight wires because they're inexpensive and just easy to practice your wire bends on. So we're going to be using some 19 by 25 stainless steel wire. Now what I want to explain here first is how to hold these pliers when you do some wire bends. Now sometimes you're just doing these simple wire bends, but in other times you may have to activate a loop. For example, here we got a keyhole loop wire, and sometimes you have to do like little activations in these loops and you want to just crimp the loop just a little bit. You don't want to crush it. Okay, so it's important that you don't put too much force on this plier, otherwise you would ruin the loop. Okay, so how do we do that? So if you just squeeze down on this plier, you're gonna simply crush the loop. Okay, so what you want to do is hold the wire and hold the plier in a way so you're not crushing the loop, and you can control the forces. Okay, and the way I do that, I hold the plier, I put my thumb underneath the fulcrum of the plier, I hold my index finger here and put my middle finger inside the plier, and the rest is just support. And now I have a nice support for this plier, so I can exert force, but I have a control over it, so I'm not gonna crush it. Okay, so you may want to practice this a little bit. So this is just how you hold the plier. Just put your thumb here, index finger, middle finger, and this way you got a nice control over how much force you exert. Okay, so you can practice here that you can squeeze pretty hard with this plier without losing control. Okay, if you just hold it like this and squeeze, you're just simply gonna put too much force on anything you're squeezing with this plier. So make sure practice this method of holding this plier, and that will help you with your practice. So that would be practice number 1. Okay. So what we'll do here first is just review the first, second, and third order bends. So like I mentioned earlier, this is the first order bend, okay, and this is just your in and out bend, okay. And then you will have a second order bend. So this is going to be your second order bend. Second order bend is an angulation bend, and that's for example, when you're looking at the teeth from a side view. For example, this is your 3, that's a 4, and this is the 5, and then maybe this canine is just a little angled. You got your brackets on these teeth, and maybe the bracket was positioned incorrectly on this tooth, okay. So now what we would like to do is angle this canine back like these teeth, okay. So you could reposition the bracket and put the bracket in a correct position, but maybe you don't want to do that, or you cannot do that. So you have your wire going this way. What you could do, you could do a second order bend, which is a angle correction bend, okay. So the way you're going to do that, you're going to take the, and this is your 19 by 25 stainless steel wire again. You're going to have a down turn before the wire, and then you're going to turn up to do a little angle, and this is what's going to create an angulational correction, and then you come back with the wire bend and straight. So this is going to be your bend, and it's going to look like this. So this is your second order bend, and this will create an angulational angling force on this canine that's going to turn the root back. Okay, so that's your second order bend. The third order bend is for torque, and we are not going to do that right now. I'm going to cover that in a different seminar, because you need different pliers for that preferably. So I'm not going to cover how to do torque bends right now, because we're just going to stick to the basics here and just make sure you know how to follow along. So we're going to first practice our first order bend, okay. So how are we gonna do that? So we're gonna get your wire, okay. Now this is a 19 by 25 wire, so the 25 dimension is the width of it, the way it's going into the bracket, and the 19 is more of a height of it when you're looking at the teeth from the side view, okay. So if you have a preformed arch wire, it's really obvious which way you're going to bend it. The in and out bends are gonna come this way, okay. But we're not using a preformed arch wire, we're just going to use this straight arch wire. If you have preformed arch wire, just use that, it really doesn't matter. But just for practice sake, we're going to use these straight arch wires. Now first thing you want to do is make sure that your arch wire is flat on the table, okay. It doesn't have any bends in it, and this one has just a little bit over there, but make sure it's nice and flat, okay. So it's going to be important to keep this arch wire flat as you do your bends, okay. So our first bend is going to be this 90-degree turn. Now when you look at your plier, you know, it has a round part and it has more of a square part, so we're going to be doing our bends with more of a square part of the plier to make nice sharp turns so you can do these bends, okay. So we're going to hold our wire and then what we'll do is, so the way we do the bends, so you hold the wire with the plier real strong, and then you make the bends with pushing with your fingers, okay. You don't hold the wire with your fingers and then bend with the plier, because then you will do curves on the wire, okay. So it's important that you hold the wire with your plier, and then you're going to be doing the bends with your finger, okay. So our first bend is going to be towards us, so we have our plier with the square part towards me, and then I'm going to hold it real firmly, and I'm going to make a nice 90-degree turn towards me, like so. And then you want to make sure that it's about 90 degrees, okay. Alright, so we have our first turn right here, okay. So we're going to make sure that the wire continues to be flat on the table. Okay, so now we're gonna create this little odd step, and you just want to do about maybe 1 to 2 millimeters here. So what you'll do is you pick up your wire. Okay, so now we're gonna turn around our plier, because we're gonna be bending the wire that way. So we're gonna flip the plier around so the square part is facing away from us. Okay, so now we're gonna do our second bend by holding the wire nice and strong right here. Okay, and now we're gonna push the wire away from us, creating that nice low step here, and then we're gonna make sure that we keep the plane of the wire the same. Okay, so we want to make sure that these two lines are parallel, and also we want to make sure that we don't create any extra bends in the wire. Okay, so as you bending this wire, you know, make sure that the wire stays nice and parallel to the first part of the wire. Okay, so what I mean by that is when you as your wire starts out, you have a 90-degree turn, and this part should be parallel, and actually our last part is going to be parallel too, and here your wire should be still nice and flat on the table. Okay, so now we're gonna pick this up and we're gonna create a third bend. So now we're gonna go to the width of the bracket and a little bit more, and you would measure this out in the mouth, and you would mark your wire. We're just kind of practicing the bends here, so we're not practicing fitting this to the patient, but normally you would mark your wire with a wax pencil. Okay, so again, the plier is the sharp part of the plier, the more square part of the plier is away from us, and then we're gonna make a nice little bend here, again about 90 degrees. Okay, so we're gonna do 90-degree bend here. All right, and gonna make sure that you keep these two parts about parallel. Okay, and then you're gonna flip around your plier. Okay, and then you're gonna have the square part of the plier towards you, and now we're gonna come towards us. Okay, and now we're gonna have to do about the same size step as you had there first. Okay, so now we're gonna push the wire towards us, and also have to make sure that we're not creating an extra bend like I just did, making this wire not flat anymore. Okay, so we have to always tweak this to make sure the wire is nice and flat on a table. And see, I don't have a 90-degree turn here, so I'm gonna fix that. Okay, so I'm gonna come back here, hold the wire real strong, and I'm gonna fix it, make sure I have a nice little parallel line, the way these just like the way my drawing was. Okay, now if your wire is not flat on the table, then you have to do little tweaks and it's important to, you know, do all those little adjustments to make the wire just so it lays nice and flat on the table. Okay, I get some obstructions here on the side from the recording equipment, so I keep running into that, but the idea there is to have your bends nice and same plane as you started out with the wire. Okay, so now we have basically our odd bend, just like we drew it on the paper. Okay, so good. So again, to practice this, you want to make sure that you maybe draw it on a piece of paper, and then you do these bends with pushing the wire against the more square part of the plier. Okay, and always check, make sure that your bends are not creating extra curves on your wire, so everything's nice and flat plane. Okay, so this is your in and out bend. Okay, so now we're gonna practice the angulation band, which is the second order band, but first I'm gonna take this part off with my distal end cutter because we don't need that anymore. Okay, so there's that first, and now we're going to do our second order band, which is your angulation band. So now we will have one band that's 90 degree, then we will have less than 90 degrees, another band that's less than 90 degrees, and come back with a 90 degree band. Okay, so we're gonna have 4 bands, and again, this is for the angulation. This is your second order band. Okay, so again, we're gonna go and in this case we're gonna bend the wire towards us, so we will have the square part of the plier again towards me, and then I'm gonna create a nice 90 degree bend here. All right, there. So that's about 90 degrees. Then we're gonna have a little slant coming up. So now what we'll do is we flip our plier around and make the square part facing away from us, and now we're gonna do a turn that's going up in an angle. Okay, so I'll show you in 1 second. So it's going up in an angle like so. So this is what's going to create that angulational force, angle force for that canine. Okay, so now we have this. Okay, so now if you notice, I put a little extra bend here so I can show you how you need to fix this. So see, this wire is no longer on the same plane, so if I put it on the table, there's space underneath this arm because there is a bend, extra bend that I didn't mean to put in there. I just did it so I can show you how to fix it. So this wire is not flat anymore, so we need to have this wire nice and flat. So we're gonna do just a little tweaking. And you want to make sure that this wire is nice and flat when you put it on the table. Okay, so now if you look at what we have so far, so we have created the first part of the angle. Okay, so now we need to come back down and over. Okay, so now I'm gonna flip the plier around and again have the more square part of the plier towards me, and I'm gonna do this sharp bend to come down straight towards towards me, so I can even out this wire. So now what needs to happen, you need to create this continuation of the wire, so this should be a continuation of that. Okay, so now first we're gonna finish this bend, and then we're gonna check on the table so it's nice and flat. Alright, so now we are going to add our last bend, which is right here. So where are we going to put our bend? So our bend should be a continuation of this wire here, so it should be about right there. Okay, so we're going to pick up this wire with the square part towards us. We're going to hold it here and visualize where this wire would continue if this angle bend wasn't there. Okay, so then we're gonna bend the wire towards us. All right, and then that creates the last part of the bend, and then all we have to do is just look at our wire in every direction, make sure it has no extra bends, and we have a nice little angle bend to create that angulational correction for that tooth, just like we have on our drawing. So that's your second order bend. Okay, so again, there's several things that are kind of tricky here, so you want to make sure that you keep practice on this long wire, and you try to always make sure that the wires are on a nice plane, and that your bends are nice and even. Okay, so that's your second order bend. Now another thing that you may find useful would be wire bend that you can use for correcting deep bite. Okay, so deep bite, how do we correct deep bite and what is deep bite? So we're not going to talk about that too long, but deep bite is maybe you have you know, at the lower anterior teeth, and then you have your central incisors and your lateral incisors cover much of the lower teeth. So this is the upper arch and this is the lower arch. Okay, so this is the mandible and this is the maxilla. So you have a situation where you have a deep bite because you have a deep curve of speech. So these teeth have these brackets, these lower teeth, and then what's happening is the upper teeth are biting on those brackets because we have a deep bite problem. So what we need to do is correct the deep bite. Some of the best way to correct the deep bite is bending the lower sevens and the upper sevens and level the curve of Spee and the curve of Wilson. But if you still have a deep bite, what you could do is you could do some intrusion bends on the wire. So if you have a 19 by 25 wire coming straight and you still have a deep bite, and this is 19 by 25 stainless steel, what you could do between the 2 and a 3, you create a down bend on the wire like so, and that will create a intrusion force on these teeth, basically 2 to 2 on the lower arch. Okay, so that would help correct your deep bite. How do we do this? Well, it's much like, it's very similar to our in and out bend, just it's in a different plane. Okay, so this would be not in and out but more like up and down. So what you could do and we're gonna take this off again with the distal end cutter. So what you could do now is actually you're gonna have a bend coming down, so it's not an in and out but it's more coming down. Okay, so you're gonna take your wire, you're gonna create these 90-degree turns, and this is fairly simple now that you practiced. All you do is you just create these 90-degree turns on the wire. Okay, so that's your first down bend, and then you're gonna turn your plier. You create about a 2 millimeter intrusion bend. You have to make sure that the wire nice and continuous. Okay, just like that. Okay, and again, like I told you, make sure that your wire is nice and flat on the table like so, and then you're gonna measure out the distance to the bracket of the other lower two, and then you're gonna flip your plier so your square part is facing away from you, and then you're gonna create your other 90-degree turn. You check your wire, make sure it's flat on the table. It is. Man, we are just doing great today. And then you're gonna do the the fourth turn that would make the intrusion bend the same on both teeth. And again, this wire is not flat now on the table because I got an extra bend, so I just evened it out to make it nice and even. So look, if you put this wire on the lower 2 to 2, it will feel an intrusion bend to correct the deep bite. Okay, so I'll show you an example here what it would look like in a minute. So this will create an intrusion bend. Now the problem with this is you can't activate it. So once you put it in, this will correct some deep bite, but after that you can't really activate it because you can't really make this bend any longer. I mean, you could, but it's not easy. So you can't really reactivate it now. Okay, so one thing that would be good if you took one of these keyhole wires, and let's see here, you could have this keyhole wire. Okay, and the way this works, and this is not sized, so you have to bear with me, but it fits on the lower arch, and it would fit between, you have to size it. This is not sized, I'm just kind of showing you as an example. You can put these loops between the 2 and 3, And then if you crimp these loops, you would make this part shorter, so that would make this wire come down lower, and that will create an intrusion force on these anterior teeth. Okay, so if you just simply would crimp the inside part of this loop, that would nicely create an intrusion band for these lower teeth. Okay, so how do we do that? The way you would do that is you would get you can do this with a 3-prong plier, would be even easier, but we don't have a 3-prong plier, so we're going to use our light wire plier because we have that in our hands. And you're going to take the keyhole wire, which should be flat on the table like this when you start, and then what you will do is you're going to not crimp, but push together, crush this part of the loop, so that will force this part of the wire lower, so it will create an intrusion force. Okay, so the way you do that is you hold your plier like this, and you're gonna very gently push, and it will create an intrusion band that looks like a little bit like a shoe, or a boot. Okay, so I just if you compare the two, you can kind of see that the two parts like this loop and this loop are different. Okay, so this one has an intrusion band. If I put it on a table now, you know, this wire is not flat because I need to do the same thing to the other side. So now on the other side I have to do the same thing and simply crunch this part of the wire just the same amount as I did on the other side. Okay, and this is when your plier holding technique is going to come really handy. And make sure that these legs are nice and even still. So now you have a wire with an intrusion band. So if I put it on a table, it is almost flat, so I need to give it a little tweak. Sometimes you make these legs of the wire bigger or smaller, so you want to make sure that you correct that after you put your bends in. But now if you would get on the same plane, you would see that there is a step. Okay, so if you look at it, there's a pretty big step up, and if you if this is the nose of the patient up here and this is the chin, then you'll see that this is intruding the lower 2 to 2. Okay, well, then the nice thing with this, every time the patient comes in, we can simply give it a little crunch, and that will create more intrusion bands. So this one you can activate every time a patient comes in, which is a huge benefit compared to the wire band that we just did. Where did it go? Right here. It's a big benefit compared to this. This one we cannot activate once we've done it once. So this would be the difference between the two. This can easily be activated again. This is my preferred one. This is what I use. I really like these. I really like these loops because it's very easy to reactivate and do more with them. So good, because oftentimes what happens is patients has a deep bite, and you know, you have to do it in stages over several appointments by the time you can correct the deep bite. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that made sense, and if any questions, don't forget to let me know, and stay tuned for our wire bending 101 seminars, and hopefully you get to practice this and get good at these wire bends that will really help you out with some of the cases. Okay, thank you for watching, and have a good rest of the day. Bye.